Every beginning, they say, carries a little lie, or maybe it's not a lie exactly, more like a negotiation between memory and myth, loss and longing, history and hope. Genesis, the so called first book of the Bible, though if we're being honest, it reads more like someone's fifth draft, isn't an innocent origin story. It's a highly curated, politically savvy, beautifully conflicted attempt at the impossible, inventing a people out of chaos and exile, and then, as if that weren't enough, retroactively installing them at the dawn of time with God's signature on the dotted line. Let's be clear. Genesis isn't about what happened. It's about what had to happen to justify what did. It's not history, it's ideology and narrative drag. A people doesn't simply emerge from dust. They're editorialized into existence. You'll find them tucked under genealogical scaffolding, crammed into a flood myth borrowed from Mesopotamian IP, or stitched together from multiple wife and sister stories that all somehow point inexorably toward Israel. The family of promise, the book assures us, though you can bet the family dinners were absolute chaos. I read Genesis not as a revelation, but as Revelation's performance. It's a dramaturgy of divine favoritism, a stage on which selection and exclusion play out like rehearsals for nationhood. Think of it as casting your ancestors in a cosmic origin story, and like any good casting decision, it tells you far more about the director than the actors. Which brings us to some inconvenient questions. The ones nobody asked over coffee in Babylon. What is the cost of beginning? Who gets the lines and who's left in the footnotes? And how does a people emerge from a text, and what becomes of the ones who don't? Genesis doesn't give stable answers here, but in its beauty, its contradictions, its fingerprints of editorial cunning, it gives the spectacle of a people becoming. Not once, not in some single pristine moment, but over and over every time the story is told, every time it is read aloud, remembered or reimagined. Now, no origin story is ever just about origins. Genesis, when you look at it through the lens of historical embeddedness, emerges not as a pristine record, but as a response to rupture, specifically the trauma of exile. Compiled and redacted over centuries, from the monarchic period in the 10th century BCE to the Babylonian exile in the 6th, Genesis is a text forged under pressure, political, theological, existential. This isn't a book written from the mountaintop. It's a book written from the wreckage. At its core, Genesis reconstitutes identity. The earliest layers, Yahwistic and Elohistic, likely emerged in the monarchies, shaped by oral storytelling and court ideology. But during the exile, the narrative takes on a deliberate, almost surgical precision. Priestly redactors, writing under the shadow of Babylon's empire, did more than preserve tradition, they curated it. This is not neutral preservation. This is survival theology. The genealogies are where the ideological force is clearest. They don't merely list names, they perform a narrowing cosmic history shrinks to a tribal story. Adam to Noah, Shem to Abraham, Isaac to Jacob. Each link tightens the focus toward a single chosen line. Others, like Ishmael, Esau, the Canaanites, appear only to fade, names lingering as props from an earlier draft. Redaction as identity politics, maybe. By the end, the sons of Jacob settled in Egypt aren't just a family, they are the family of promise. Genesis becomes an ideological arc, not to preserve the past, but to reinterpret it for a scattered people, a people who need a beginning because they've lost their middle. Call it scripture if you like. It is, but it's also a strategy. Genesis tells us less about what happened and more about what had to be imagined to survive. Post-traumatic theology, perhaps, refracted through myth, memoir, and editorial sleight of hand. It's not naive, it's not innocent, it's not merely beautiful. It's all of those things, and it's also unmistakably cunning.